What's going on, everybody? I'm Phil DiMartino. This is Tyler Pyburn. Welcome to another edition of the 5 Tool Productions podcast. And today, as we embark on a new year, we're going to spend some time talking about some things that we think are important for marketers and content creators to be thinking about in 2019.
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny. You see these lists every single year, like, oh, here's my predictions for 2019. And it was funny. I was watching one the other day, and I was saying to myself, this is the most generic list I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Video, social media.
Right.
These are the same things we see over and over every single year. How can we make it a little different and things that you can actually maybe think about for the upcoming year? So we kind of put together a short list of things that we think might happen and probably will happen, honestly.
Yeah, and for all of these, I think the interesting thing is trying to think about being actionable, right? Yeah. We'll try to cover that here, but always, that's what we always try to be thinking about is how can you take these, this topic that we're talking about and turn into action for you.
And also that maybe can also evolve so it's not the exact same thing next year, because like I mentioned, video, social media,
right.
Those have been on the predictions for the last 20 years, it seems like, really.
Exactly.
So how can we change it up a little bit?
Okay, so the first one that you wanted to talk about is one that I love talking about, and we talk about a lot here, ownership of the algorithm. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so ownership of the algorithm, it kind of works twofold, for the end user as well as for the brand that is actually producing the content. So first off, ownership of the algorithm for the end user. How sick are you about hearing about algorithms and saying, I'm logging on to Facebook, I'm logging on to Instagram. It's like, I just want chronological order of what, yes, I know I can change that, but I think we're gonna see a lot more people, just given all the stuff that's taken place, are gonna be changing them, saying, I wanna own my own algorithm. And one of the things I think is, we were debating a little bit this morning before we came in here, we said, email is something that has very little algorithm to it. Now, obviously, things like Gmail, it does put a little spin in it, but by comparison, you're not missing a lot of messages when it comes to the algorithm versus, say, Facebook or Instagram. We say, I really haven't seen anything from so-and-so influencer in a while. Well, it's because they changed the algorithm up. Whereas in email, you're still probably seeing it. It might be in a different bucket, but you're still probably seeing it inside there. So I think the end user is going to see a lot more of, or trying to take ownership of the algorithm as opposed to letting the algorithm just kind of dictate what they want.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing from a creator's perspective is trying to kind of meet the end user where they are. So we've talked about this in the past and we'll continue to talk about it, I think, even more, but the idea of things like private Facebook groups and messenger pods on Instagram, all these types of Facebook Messenger, all these ways that the end user is trying to kind of own their experience a lot more and say, these are the people I want to talk to, these are the brands I want to hear from, and finding that extra step to opt into. Because in the old days it was like a page, see their stuff. Obviously we all know we've moved beyond that. So end users are increasingly trying to find ways to actually quickly and easily engage with the content that they actually want. So as brands, if you want to do a good job of getting in front of them, that means knowing what that looks like and finding ways to provide value to them in those spaces where they're spending more of their time on these networks.
Yep, exactly. And that kind of honestly goes right in line with kind of our next point, which is the whole idea of better content. I mean, how many stats have we heard, and we've talked about them ourselves, like the 100 millions of hours that are uploaded to YouTube every second, the amount of people that are using Facebook right now, the growth of Instagram, how IGTV has come out, how people are uploading their stories, whether you're on Snapchat, whether you're starting to use Twitch now, which we just talked about as well. There is so much content out there that you have to be very mindful of where you're reaching them, where the audience is, but also, is your stuff any good? So kind of that next point, and I'm sure I kind of took, you were going to lead me into one and I was going to take one, but this kind of makes me think about that you need to create better shit. You have to have better content out there, because what's happening is that the people are just uploading to get it uploaded. We've done it ourselves. We just say, ooh, we have to get something up there, check the box, when we have to be mindful about where is it going, who's the audience that we're reaching at this moment in time, who should be consuming this, where are they, and is it any good? Is it answering any of their questions? So I think mindful, better content, and what I don't mean that you necessarily have to go out and produce feature films, you just have to be more mindful of where your audience is, mindful of the end user. As terms of making your content better.
I think that last part you touched on is a really important part, is always keeping your audience in mind and trying to create things that are valuable for them. You mentioned all those stats and the infographics that show 500 hours uploaded, whatever, and it's always these crazy numbers.
Oh, it's insane numbers, and you can pull stats anywhere, but it's...
But, I think that 5 or 10 years ago, those were posted up all around our office, right? At a company we used to work for, and they're posted around everyone's office to show kind of the value of being on social, right?
Why you need to be there. I don't think that argument is taking place anymore. People understand that that's happening. They know they have to
I
be
actually
there.
think if you talk about those stats now, it's should be way more driving the conversation, not to case build like, oh, we need to be there, but it's way more about the point you're trying to make, which is, okay, if there's 1 billion hours of content getting uploaded to a given network on a given day, that means that yours needs to be really, really good, but not just good, really specific to your target audience.
Well, that's just it. Because, I mean, I look at it almost on the adverse ways. Like, there's already 100 billion hours being uploaded in a single day. How am I going to cut through?
Right.
Well, the answer is, who is the end person? It can't be everybody. Who is the end person? Is it a teenager? Is it a 7-year-old? Is it B2B, someone that's in the looking for HVAC information, right? Who is your target client? And that's how you can become successful creating your content that way.
Another one, you talk about case building and budget and spending money. Another topic you want to talk about for 2019, and maybe not in the way that a lot of people are going to talk about it.
It's so funny. I'm probably going to get crushed.
No, I think it's good. It's artificial intelligence. So what's your 2019 take on artificial intelligence?
My take is that people are going to throw money at it and not have any idea what it actually is. Because even myself, I mean, I get an idea, but I still can't really put it into words to say, I need to leverage this right at this point in time.
Well, you know what artificial intelligence is as a concept, but in terms of how are you going to use it to make money or provide value for your customer?
Exactly. I don't fully understand. If I give you $20 today, what does that $20 actually do? Does it get me views? Does it get me to answer questions to people? I don't fully understand that. And I think a lot of people are probably in a similar boat. And even if they have a basic understanding, I think they'll probably spend the money on it, but not really knowing what the return is. It's actually, we just talked about social in the very beginning. People were saying, let's spend money on social media, but they didn't really understand what that actually meant.
Right.
I think now it's probably something similar. Let's spend money on artificial intelligence, not really totally understanding what that actually means and how to use it. So I think you're going to spend more money than you think and really not know what the return is on it.
I think it's true for artificial intelligence and augmented reality. The two kind of AI and AR, the buzzwords that get thrown around a lot as next big thing to watch out for. They're going to take over the world. And it's the type of thing where it's like you can get caught up in trends and you can get caught up in buzzwords, but it all goes back to your audience, and you need to think about what are we going to use these technologies for that are going to be useful for our audience? And if you can't clearly answer that question, then you shouldn't be throwing big money at it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, depends on what your budget is too. If you could say, I've got X amount of dollars to just spend to test something, see how it works, fine, that's great. I know as a small business owner, I don't have that. So.
Right. Another big topic, one that we're seeing more and more across a lot of different mediums, especially video and a lot of podcasts as well, is content partnerships. And I think that'll continue to grow too.
I think that's something that's really cool that's taking place. I mean, you've seen it for a while with people paying money to influencers to say, here, just talk about my brand. But I think we're starting to see the trend now shift to influencers and brands are really more partnering up to create great content together, and that might be whether it's a video, whether it's a blog post. And something you wrote about a little while ago was the partnership between The Athletic and the Players Tribune. Mm-hmm. These are two technically almost rivals because different brands that could say we're pulling this similar audience, people that love sports and love athletes, but yet they partnered together to create a great series about Gordon Hayward, right? Mm-hmm. To me, it was like, that's really interesting approach that they could say, nope, we're going to leverage both of our audiences. The Athletic paid the Players Tribune, right? I mean, you would know better than I would.
But. Yeah, it's the type of thing where the Athletic's a subscription model, so they need great content to get people to sign up in the first place, but then also to keep people around. And the Players Tribune has this direct access to players because that's kind of their whole shtick. They are, and they do a really great job with video and content creation in general and storytelling. So it's kind of a natural fit, right? It's perfect for the Athletics audience. It's this kind of inside exclusive content. And it works for the Players Tribune because they're going to get paid for content where they might have been producing it or looking to produce it anyway.
Exactly.
Another one I've noticed a lot is in podcasting. So it's kind of an interesting approach. Like I'll listen to a podcast and the commercial break will be basically like a preview for a branded partnership podcast for someone else. Lyft has sponsored some of these. Lyft will sponsor one about like drivers for Lyft who are using their, the money they earn driving for Lyft to try to launch a business or pursue something in their own lives, and they're telling the stories of those people, right? And they're producing those podcasts in partnership with media organizations. So it's this sponsored content that's actually interesting, as opposed to just commercials. And it all ties into everything else we're talking about.
You mentioned it. One thing that was really interesting is that we recently went to the NAB show in New York, the National Association of Broadcasters show in New York. And one of the talks was all about podcasting in general. They had someone, the host of True Crime Obsessed, who is just an absolute character. And he went on there, and I guess this other company was starting up another true crime podcast. They worked something out where they could actually talk about each other's podcast and kind of cross-promote one another so that they could tap into each other's audiences, which was really cool. I mean, the True Crime Obsessed had the devout following. This new podcast that came up had a lot of money to spend. So they said, well, we don't have the devout following just yet, so let's spend a little bit more money and let's kind of cross-promote back and forth. And it was just a great partnership, and that's what they talked about in terms of, from a podcasting standpoint, of how can you cross-promote one thing to it. And we talk about it all the time, bringing interviews on with other people to tap into their audience, but also giving them something in return. Don't just say, oh, I really love your audience, I want to work with you. Okay, well, what can you help each other out with and create something pretty cool together? And I think that's really the whole thing that we're looking for 2019, is partnering up with different brands and things.
Yeah, and I think the big headline there is like the idea of a brand being like the presenting sponsor for something has been around forever. But in this model, it's way more appropriate content for that brand, right? It's not, some sporting event brought to you by some random company who's the official sponsor of, that sporting event.
I'm the mattress that's the official sponsor of the Boston Red Sox, right? Like
right. It's way more about finding really good tie-ins to produce stuff specific for your audience where there's actually a match. And it's cool to see a lot more brands thinking that way because, like, again, people don't mind watching sponsored content. If you're going to be a brand that pays for sponsored content, but it's really good, that makes me happy as a consumer because I'm getting to see good content I might not have been able to otherwise, as long as you're doing it thoughtful about me, right? If you're trying to sell to me and you want to partner with a media organization to get in front of me, awesome. I have no problem with that. Be upfront that you're being, that you're paying to promote it, and do the work to make sure it's something I actually care about. But once you're doing those things, I think it's actually a win-win.
What would be interesting, like, use an example of just throwing something, this literally just came to me, and we should talk with them, is if Starbucks said, I want to do something about small businesses starting up in a coffee shop. Right? Like that, and trying to partner with some of the people that are already in there and tell the stories of those people that are customers, right? So I think there's, the partnerships is something, we've seen it. It's not like this is brand new, but I think we're going to see more thoughtful partnerships other than just pay you, talk about my stuff, I'm the official sponsor. We're going to see more of that in 2019.
And it kind of ties into the last point we wanted to make when you think about your audience and what the point is of your customers and what they're trying to accomplish. Lyft, it made sense for. The Starbucks example you just gave, it made sense. But the idea of like brand purpose and what are you here for, and how are you serving the community at large, not just for sales, but brand purpose as part of marketing in 2019.
It's funny, one of the things my wife actually says is she started a small business herself, and she said giving back is the new black. So we're seeing more companies, more businesses, more brands have that other purpose outside of trying to make money and just trying to grow, which is pretty cool and it's pretty inspiring. And you hear people say like, well, are you doing that for the wrong reasons? Are you just saying, for every candy bar I sell, I'm going to give a child in need a new candy bar? Are you just doing that because you just want to make money and that's your marketing strategy? Don't do that because you want to make money. Do it because you really want to give back. Like I use Tom's as an example. They do a great job. Buy a pair of shoes, they get a pair of shoes every single time. And the whole mission was started because he was traveling and said, I really want it. His name isn't actually Tom, by the way. It's not Tom's.
Never knew that.
But he was traveling and saw a bunch of kids without shoes. Said, how can I help this? What's a way to do this? So giving back, and not just giving back, but having a purpose bigger than I want to make a ton of money.
Right.
Right.
And I think, shout out to one of the great companies we work with, Reputation Institute. We've heard them talk at length about the ways that real social responsibility,
social and corporate responsibility, hear it all the time from
the
them.
way it plays into your brand's overall, authenticity and trust, and it helps. It's as long as it's real, as you said, you can't just do it just as a token gesture. People see through these kind of things. So Absolutely. As long as it's real, it will help you, build relationships with potential customers and grow your business. So it's a really important part of this too.
Yeah,
sure.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Again, the reason has to be because you really feel passionate and strongly about that cause. Why are you doing that? So I think it's cool when companies can do that.
Yeah. So we'll obviously talk about all this stuff a lot more throughout all of 2019. I think that there will be a lot of specific actions to take on a lot of these things that we'll get into a lot more.
Watch for a blog post.
Yeah.
We'll probably put it down on the paper. Right?
That too. Yeah, awesome stuff. What to look for in 2019. We look forward to talking to all of you throughout all of 2019. And thanks for joining us again on another edition of the 5 Tool Productions video podcast.